And I went back to my friends and I said, hey, listen, I'm starting to work on Monday. Whatever.
Right.
He said, oh, no, you can't do that. He says, that's stupid. You don't want to work for nobody. You stay with us. You work with us in the restaurant. And down the road, we'll open something together. I said, sure. So I started working in the restaurant.
So you didn't do the photography?
No.
Okay.
I said, okay, convincing enough.
Right.
I thought that there was more opportunities anyways. So I was in the restaurant business for 8 years.
Wow.
We started with one restaurant. We ended up having 4 restaurants.
Oh, amazing.
Very successful restaurants.
Okay.
But we were too many partners.
And so bad things happen.
Bad things happen when there's too many partners, and life was good.
Okay.
And really, but you can't control what other partners do.
And what did you take from that experience about, like, obviously there was a lot of good in that, but there was probably a lot of things that you took from it that you learned as a business owner.
I learned that I can manage.
Okay.
That was
People
and a business.
Right.
But it was all intuitive. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't know that I could manage.
Yeah.
I knew that I could manage people by being in a kibbutz, because no matter what I did in a kibbutz, I ended up always being a manager somehow.
Right.
Whatever I did, I got more and more responsibility or responsibilities. And I was that's where I learned that I could manage people.
And run a business.
And run, in a kibbutz, it was not run a business in the sense that whatever I did in the kibbutz was always very welcomed. So,
Gotcha.
And I knew that people were happy with whatever I did
And
in whatever field I did. Until today,
Yeah.
they speak about the records of crop in potatoes that I had while I was living there. It says nobody broke your record.
You still have the best crop of potatoes?
Yeah, the best and the biggest crop.
Biggest crop.
So, I mean, and it just came. I mean,
Yeah.
I never thought that it was like, wow, or whatever. I just got the compliment from people, and I said, well, that's fine, that's okay.
And then you took this restaurant experience, and then you...
So I took a restaurant. When I started the restaurant,
Yeah.
it was one that was almost failing.
Right.
One of the restaurants were failing.
One of the...
So
yeah.
that's how it happened. There were 3 partners. And when I became the 4th, they said, okay, they saw what I did in one of the restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
They said, okay, this restaurant is not going very well. We want you to go there and do something about it.
Right.
I said, sure, why not? I transformed the restaurant from basically dead restaurant to become the most nightlife restaurant
Wow.
in Jerusalem. It was like huge success.
Okay, that's awesome.
It became the place in Jerusalem. But like I said, things don't always work when you're 2, it's hard enough. But when you're 4 partners,
Wow.
you never know where it's going to come from.
Wow.
So that partnership fell apart. And my first idea was to go back to school.
Okay.
Right after that, I said, that's the opportunity. I made some money in the restaurant business. I said, okay, that's the time for me to go to school.
Right.
So my first intuition was to go, believe it or not, into movie school.
Be a director or...
I wanted to be a director.
Okay.
So I got accepted at the International Film School in London,
Right.
England. And in the meantime, I was supposed to leave within a month after I split from my partners. But I was waiting for them to settle with me. It was never coming, then it never came.
Right.
And one day I got a subpoena, or whatever you call it. They impeached me from leaving Israel until I signed the documents back to them, my shares.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'll sign the shares, but you got to give me my money. In the meantime, I couldn't leave Israel because of that. So I said, okay, in that case, it's going to be war. So I said, you want war, you'll get war.
Right.
So I got into litigations with them for 5 years.
And you were in Israel.
And in the
Okay.
I was in Israel. In the meantime, I went back to school.
Okay.
Went back to school. And I was working during the day and studying at night school. And I did a degree in international marketing and business administration.
Okay.
And that's when I discovered that I knew nothing about business.
Oh, okay. You,
I thought, I was in business, but the fact that I was in business before I went to school helped me a lot, understanding
to apply
Yeah.
the knowledge.
the knowledge
Right.
to the theoretic,
Yeah.
the
The theory of
the theory of. So basically, after 5 years, well, I did 5 years instead of 4.
Mhm.
The studies were 4 years, but I decided to take, since I liked psychology, I decided to take I liked the psychology, that consumer psychology, that was part of in marketing.
Right.
And I liked it so much that I decided I want to learn more about, people and psychology. So there was a course that was attracted my attention. I decided to stay 1 year and to make a second major, which was basically human resources. So I did an extra major in human resources. And after 5 years, in the meantime, I met my second wife.
Right.
And the reason I'm in Canada is because she's Canadian.
Okay. And so you were done your school?
I met my wife before I went to school.
Okay.
And it's a funny story because I met her through one of my partners, and she was the sister, my partner's sister-in-law, and the partner, which was the real reason I left the partnership.
The partnership.
So
there's a bit of
he was not very happy about
a bit
that.
of a chasm there.
Yeah,
A bit of a,
yeah. So anyways, I ended up basically while I was studying, I was working during the day in a photo lab.
Okay.
So it was one of the biggest photo labs in Israel, the biggest in Jerusalem, the third biggest in Israel. And we decided that he was my boss at the time, but he wanted me to become more involved in his company. And he decided that we should start importing equipment, that is photographic equipment, and we ended up becoming partners.
Wow.
Into a venture of bringing laminating products from England to Israel and distribute them. And in the meantime, we got an invitation from my ex-in-laws to come and
To Canada.
Canada and visit.
Right.
Because my first daughter was born. My second daughter. My first daughter from second marriage.
Right.
So I came to Canada and I fell in love with Canada.
You came to the country.
I came here, it was August, beautiful summer.
Yeah.
Everything was green.
Right.
It was just heaven.
Right.
I said to my ex, I said, you know what? We're going to have to come here to relax for a few years because there's too much stress in Israel.
Okay.
Very stressful environment. And I felt like, oh my God, you can breathe. And it's a different rhythm, right?
Yeah.
So I went back to Israel and said, my new partner, I think I'm going to quit. He was so angry anyways. He was really pissed off because we started this business and he knew nothing about that part of the business.
Right.
I was But I told him, you know what? Don't worry. In the meantime, thanks to me, I helped him because I had friends in the banking system. I went to a friend of mine that was a manager at one of the banks and a bank that I was dealing with. I said, listen, we need a line of credit. So I arranged for a line of credit to this guy. He couldn't get the line of credit.
Okay.
He was in business for 15, 20 years, couldn't get the line of credit.
And you got it.
And I got it for him. And I told him, listen, you have a line of credit. I'm going to bring you a person that will replace me.
Okay.
And do my job for you. So you don't have to worry about anything. And really, I set up everything for him and told him goodbye. Because I was in dilemma there at the time. Said, there is something new in Israel for me, where I'm going to branch out on something totally different from the restaurant business, where I had my share of it and I didn't want to go back into the restaurant business. It's simply slavery.
Right.
And I couldn't see myself go back to that kind of business.
Okay.
It's nice when you're single. Very nice. But once you have kids and you're married, you don't want to
goes out the window.
You don't want to do that.
Gotcha.
So basically,
so then you were.
So we decided to move to Canada.
Wow.
So that's how.
So now you've been probably 5 different moves, 6 different moves. What year do you come to Canada?
So I came to visit first in '89.
Right.
Went back to Israel and made all the paper arrangement and paperwork for to get basically a landed immigrant status before I came in, and which was not a problem because my wife was Canadian, and in the meantime she was pregnant with my second daughter with her, and that was 91. 91 was, I don't know if you remember,
the recession.
Never mind recession. It was also the war where they called it the
Patriot War.
They called it the Iraq Desert Storm.
Yeah, Patriot War.
Yeah, it was called Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And Saddam Hussein at the time from Iraq started shooting rockets towards Israel. It was like a huge thing. I mean, I remember having to wear masks, and we had gas masks because there was suspicion that he was going to basically gas Israel with his missiles. And somehow it was a good timing in the sense that we didn't know that the war was going to start, but in the meantime we had already decided to move to Canada. So we came to Canada, and that was during that we took the first plane that left Israel because they closed the airspace and everything for I think 3 months. Nobody could come in or out or get out of Israel. So we took the first plane that left for Canada.
After or?
No, as a matter of fact, we went through Switzerland. After the war, I mean, the danger was over.
Okay.
I think by then we knew that he wouldn't shoot any more missiles. I think the war was over anyway.
Right.
So that's when we came to Canada.
And that was 91 or 92?
91.
And you and I talked, this was during like a recession period.
Oh yeah,
here in Canada, which was
so basically that's one thing. It's I think I know what you're referring to. And before coming to Canada, I said, okay, so now I can analyze situations, politically speaking and economically speaking. And I started saying, okay, what do I do in Canada? Where do I go in Canada? I speak French, so my natural inclination is to be in Quebec, right?
Yeah, Montreal.
Montreal. Sure. And then I decided to basically educate myself about. I knew more or less what's going on in Canada because by that time I had two sisters already living in Montreal. That was another reason why it was not more
Sure.
natural for me to go to Montreal.
Yeah.
My in-laws lived in Toronto,
Okay.
but for me, I mean, my inclination is because of French. And so I took history books and whatever I could get my hands on regarding Canada,
Right.
and I started learning about. Without reading the books, I knew that at the time there was talks with Quebec separating,
Separation. Yeah. That was going on back then.
and I said that doesn't sound good and doesn't look good. And
For Quebec.
for Quebec.
For sure. Right.
And in a way, I went back to what I knew about history in the sense, and how I felt about French people, in the sense that they always behaved as sore losers. And in a sense, they never got over the fact that the Brits won,
Right.
and they lost the war at Waterloo, right? So I said, you know what? I'm going to join the winners. So I'm going to go to Ontario, which is the biggest province,
Yeah.
and where the prospect of growing as an economy was higher and bigger than. I know that Quebec was going downhill and Ontario was growing.
And then you instead of getting a job, you didn't get a job. You decided I was gonna start a business.
Yeah, well, no, my first intuition or inclination was to say, okay, I know nothing about Canada.
Right.
I knew how to speak English, but it wasn't that fluent. It was not bad. But I should probably get some education and work for somebody,
Right.
and, kind of check things around before but deep inside of me, I knew that I was going to have my own business.
Okay.
So I knew by what I was hearing in the news that Canada was going to sign for the
treaty.
the free trade agreement with
NAFTA.
NAFTA.
Yeah.
And then that they were going to implement the GST at the time.
Right.
And right away, as an economist, I was already feeling like a great economist, right? I came out of school. I said, hey, I know everything that I need to know. And I decided that basically that's a recipe for inflation.
Yeah. Big time.
Oh, no, sorry, for recession.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I come to Canada in 91. It was the biggest recession ever. The real estate market was going downhill, and businesses were closing left, right, and center. And I said, wow, that's a great time to start a business.
And that's we've had this discussion before. And why would you say, for many, why is that a good time? Because when I look at in today's market, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong here, but when I look at the housing market, right,
Uh-huh.
and to me it feels like the cattle is going to get slaughtered because all of these people are running towards the same thing, and eventually there comes a recession. Interest rates go up. People that overextended themselves then get crushed, and then the market dips, and then it changes.
Yeah.
Is that what you saw then? And
I saw that then, for
Okay.
sure. I saw that. It was scary.
right.
But for me, everything was cheap
Yeah.
because suddenly homes that were $360,000 or $400,000 were at $200,000. So basically, I was getting everything at a discount.
Like a 50% off sale
Yeah.
at Winners. Right?
Whatever, yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how I looked at things. I said, if I get into business now, I'll ride the wave when things go back. Except this was, for me, in my eyes, not a typical recession.
Okay.
It was a recession that was going to basically last a bit longer than, the usual cycle of 6 months, a year. Here I was intuitively, I thought that it was going to last 7 years. I don't know why. I said it's going to last 7 years. But in the meantime, I said, I've got plenty of time. I mean, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to learn something about business. I'm going to learn, well, first, before I started going into business, I wanted to get a job, but nobody would hire me. Why? Because I didn't have any Canadian experience. And wherever I went, there was a lineup of people that were there for interviews.
Okay.
So I had no chance.
Right.
So I said, okay, now what do I do? I'm going to have to start my own business no matter what. So I started thinking of, what do I do? So now I had two choices, photography or restaurants, two businesses that I knew.
Okay.
So I said, So I started exploring the idea of restaurants.
With kids and family.
Kids, family, and the money wasn't that good.
Yeah.
I mean, I was checking. First, I never thought of starting a restaurant from scratch.
Right.
I thought either get a franchise because of the nature of me being a new immigrant and I need some kind of, support.
Right.
So the franchise business wasn't that attractive in the restaurant business. And then one day we were invited at a friend that was an artist, for a show that he was doing. And he was at the University of Toronto. And I get there. While I was in Israel in the photo business, I knew something about framing, about laminating, I had the basic ideas of how it's done, and I did some.
Right.
So I come here and meet the guy, and we start talking, and he starts complaining. He says, "Oh, so expensive. Framing, it's crazy. You know how much it cost me to do this and to do that?" And I start making math, doing some math. In my head, I said, "Holy moly, there is quite a bit of margins there."
in the framing business.
Not knowing the prices in the market here in Canada, but I knew that it should be cheaper. I mean, it should be not more expensive than Israel.
Right.
So right away, I translated, and I said, "Holy moly." On the way back home, I said to my ex, I said, "You know what? I think it's a good business. Why don't we open a gallery?"
So that was your first inclination to open up an art gallery?
An art gallery.
Okay.
Now, I knew a bit art. I studied art. I mean, photography. So it was kind of almost natural for me to start a gallery. And do, of course, framing, which would support, would be the backbone, basically, of the business.
Okay.
I couldn't see myself getting into the gallery business or art business without having some kind of bread and butter aspect to the business, cash flow.
Yeah. Because in that business or in any business, I always look at business in two ways. There's the long term, which is sort of selling art, which has a lot of high margins in it, but the sales process takes much longer. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But in order to feed your family, as I say, rabbits and elephants, right? You need the rabbits to eat on a daily basis. And the elephants are the ones that, you go hunt. And when you get those ones, that's the whales or the elephants, right? So,
exactly. That was, as a matter of fact, that was my main focus. I had, again, a little bit of money, came with a little bit of money. I said, I want to basically preserve my capital.
Right.
How do I do that?
Right.
I said, at the bank, they were giving me 9% at the time.
Yeah.
I said, okay, so if I do business and it gives me 10%, I'm happy with that.
And that's another thing, we've talked about that. And when you think about it from that perspective, I mean, now they're not giving 9% on anything close to that. But just from a logical standpoint, if you've got $1,000 and you say, okay, I'm going to put it in the bank, and even if they give you 5% on some sort of investment, if you take that $1,000 and you invest it in yourself, if you get 6% or 10%, you've made more money than having it in the bank.
Exactly.
And so,
And I get more satisfaction
sure, and yeah,
because I know I worked for that money.
Yeah.
It's my money. I mean, as a matter of fact, this is another thing that influenced me to go into business when I came to Canada. I had a cousin of mine. I went to visit him, and he was living in Canada for 20 years already. He lived here in Unionville. He used to be in Montreal, and he was an accountant himself.
right.
So I go to see him, and he says, "So what you going to do?" I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm thinking of doing this and doing that." He says, "You know what? Whatever you do, don't work for nobody."
Oh, he told you that.
Yeah. He says, work for yourself.
Right.
So if you make $1,
Yeah.
it's all yours.
Right.
And I said, I like that.
Right.
I mean, it coincided with my
Own flow.
outlook on things.
Right.
But it was a nice reinforcement.
Okay.
So basically, everybody was against me starting a business. They were scared.
Right.
Because it was a recession. He says, everybody's going out of business. You're going into business. I says, I don't have a better alternative. So anyways, I started inquiring about the gallery business, art business, and I found one for sale.
Is that the one on Art Ave?
No.
No, that was a different art gallery.
No. That was already, I had long-term plans.
Okay.
Of going downtown.
Right.
But I said, if I want to start a business without burning myself and putting too much risk from the get-go, I mean, first business, not even 6 months in Canada.
Right.
I'm not going to take too much risk. So I decided to minimize my risk.
So you bought a business.
So I bought a business that was for sale.
Okay.
And basically, I think that the investment was higher than I would have liked to pay for it. I mean, it was the guy screwed me a little bit. I mean, but I said that's fine.
Right.
I mean, I'll take that. But the fact is that I knew that I could do better than what he did.
Okay.
And I knew that I could make it work better.
And what were those key things that you thought, okay, you see what this guy's doing, maybe he's been in it for a long time, maybe he's just past the prime, and maybe he's got all things that he's got out of it and ready to move on, or was there something else that you saw?
I saw the potential.
Okay.
I had a different, right away, I knew that what I want to do is different from what he was doing.
Okay.
So he was catering to, I'm going to give you an instance, okay? He was buying supplies from manufacturers that were seconds. He was buying seconds.
Like secondhand.
Second grade
Right.
materials from manufacturers. Basically, when I talk about materials, it was framing, which is molding, and would resell it at lower prices than what, he was selling at seconds, basically.
Right.
And there was not much wrong with what it was. I mean, there was flaws in whatever he bought. But overall, he could do good stuff with it. I mean, if you put a bit more effort into making frames, let's put it this way, he could have, make a bit more money, but he just had to work a little bit more. And I wasn't afraid of doing that. So the fact is that I didn't know that all the inventory that he sold to me was seconds. I only realized it later.
Right.
That's why I said I paid too much for the business. But, me, my focus was to be in business, start a business,
Right.
and make the best out of it.
Okay.
So when I realized that, first thing that I realized is that he wasn't paying himself enough. He was putting too much labor and not getting out enough out of it.
For himself.
For himself.
Okay.
He was basically competing on the way down with with the competition
Okay.
instead of trying to compete on the way up.
So he was meeting the
He was
level
trying to undersell
undersell in order to beat the competition,
to beat the competition.
but in the meantime he was underselling himself
Yeah,
because
exactly.
his margins
Yeah.
were too low.
So I decided to give a better product basically
Okay.
to my customers
Right.
from at least a design point of view.
Okay.
From that aspect already, I was adding value to the product that I was selling. From the art aspect of what I was selling, I mean, he was selling art that, I mean, I wouldn't even, I mean, I didn't want any of it. So I knew that the art that I was going to bring and sell there would be way
Better.
out of his league.
Okay.
And he was selling more, posters. He was selling basically reproductions, and I had put my eyes or my focus on original art. So basically, I gave a better product from the art perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and second, design perspective,
From a framing perspective.
framing design.
And so you were then selling at a higher selling price, but you were making more margin, which in turn made more profit for you in your pocket. Right?
Exactly. So what happened is that everybody was, because of the recession, by the way, everybody was cutting prices and competition to the bottom. And me, I said, you know what? Let them go to the bottom. I'm going to go to the
The other side.
the other side. I want to go to the top. So I started raising my prices in the middle of the inflation as opposed to reducing my prices.
And what do you think that did? I mean, that was another conversation we had. What did that do for you? Obviously, it raised your margins, but did your clients become better quality or more appreciative of the fact that you had a better quality product, or why would you have done that when everybody else was cutting?
Well, I would, because I knew that I was giving a better product, and I knew that people would appreciate a better product.
Right.
So basically, what I said to myself is, people that come to me for price and only for price are not my clients. I don't want them.
Yeah.
So I was making less, I was working less, making more by basically reducing my clientele base, which it was just an assumption.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be the opposite. People just appreciated and were willing to pay the price that I was asking for because they knew they were getting a better product.
And I think that's one thing I've learned too, is that people that make their decision on price, they're never loyal. They'll never be loyal, right?
Exactly.
Because if you're selling it for $1, the other guy's selling it for 95 cents.
Exactly.
They don't care about the euro or the relationship. They only care about the 5 cents.
Yeah.
So those clients will never be loyal anyway. So
That's
set your margins based on the quality and the service.
And I probably did lose some customers, but I didn't even feel it.
Right.
I felt that basically I was very happy with. I remember the guy that was working for Lincoln.
Right.
Was working for Tony that sold me the business for 8 years. He was scared. He said to me, "Don't even think of raising prices. So leave it to me, okay?"
Right.
And the first thing that I did is raise my prices 15%.
Yeah.
Lincoln 6 months later comes to me and he says, "Wow, I can't believe it." He says, within 6 months, I learned from you
Right.
in business what I didn't learn from Tony in 8 years being in business with him. I said, I don't know what's there to learn. I mean, it's just the way business is.
Right.
That's how you should do business.
Interesting.
I mean, you just have to, analyze and be able to think and
I think make
Just
make
logic.
decisions, right?
Yeah.
Logical decisions that are based on not just speculation or guessing. It's like you've understood the market.
I understood the market.
And,
I
yeah.
understood the psychology behind the customer.
Right.
Again, we go back to my studies where it was consumer psychology,
Yes.
and I knew what the customer wants and how the customer think when they're about to make a financial decision.
Sure.
So that was my forte, as opposed to people that didn't have that background.
And how long did that business
So,
go on?
so basically, the fact is that this story, I mean, within 5 years, it was so successful that I paid my first house.
You paid off the first house?
Paid off, totally paid off my first house within 5 years with that business.
Wow.
And the other guy sold it because he didn't think that he was whatever
Yeah.
the reason. He thought that he wasn't making much of it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the previous owner had a side business that he was working on, and he was letting his own employee
Run the business.
run the business. So he wasn't even there. I mean,
Yeah.
so he had other interests. So I bought the business and made of it whatever I made of it, and it turned out to be successful. Now comes the phase two. Phase two is that what I had in the back of my head
Right.
is take it to the next level. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to move to a different location, better location. Now that I established myself, have a bit more confidence in everything, related to the business. I spoke better English. I knew a bit more about how business is done in Canada and so on and so forth.
Okay.
And I said, okay, now I can play in the big league.
Right. And is that when you moved to
And then that's
Art
when
Avenue?
I went and moved to
Avenue.
to Avenue Road,
Right.
and never looked back. I mean, for a while I ran the two businesses at the same time,
Yeah.
but it was not a very good idea. I mean, you can't. I mean, the art business or gallery business or even the framing business,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very you build the customer base,
Okay.
and you are stuck with the customer base in the sense that once they're loyal, you cannot deceive them and not be at the business.
Yeah.
When they come to see you. They come to see you, they don't come to, I mean, I had customers come and ask where I was. When I wasn't there, they said, okay, that's fine, we'll
I'll
come back.
And that's a trust thing that you built up over time with your customers.
Exactly.
The loyalty is built on the fact that they know that whatever you say, you're going to deliver on.
Mm-hmm.
And your actions always speak louder than the words that you speak, right? Because if you say, I'm going to give you this product and it's going to be great, they take it home and it's not what you said it is, they're never coming back.
Exactly.
Right. So
Exactly.
the fact that they knew that if I give this Joe to something, and they probably had a lot of love and passion for, that when they give it to someone that is going to take good care of it and give them back, that's how you build up a good brand and a good name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you always have to, in a way, exceed the expectation of a customer.
Right.
Always. And that was in the back of my head. When a customer wants something, he always got more than I even promised.
Right.
And I knew the customer didn't have to worry about the product and what I'm going to deliver.
Yeah.
I delivered always above the expectation.
And you think that's what built up your your reputation and your business.
Oh, no doubt.
And you always had that standard of degree all
No
the
doubt.
time.
And
Right?
it wasn't something that I was doing, it wasn't planned. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
It's just my personality
Yeah.
is that. I deliver over always
Consistency.
consistency
Yeah.
and always above expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, I never think that what I give is enough for whatever I get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
So,
But sometimes I'm okay with that. I think, I've always had this discussion, and I have with you sometimes, is that to me, it's more important that I deliver and exceed the expectation than the remuneration that I get back sometimes. And sometimes I feel like I got enough. Sometimes I feel I didn't get enough. But the fact that I did and delivered sometimes gives me more reward than the financial aspect of it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. When I go back home in
Yeah.
the evening, even though I gave more, and sometimes you say, oh, shit, maybe I gave a bit too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I say, you know what? My reward is higher than just getting paid more
Yeah.
for it, because I feel that I gave a bit more of myself.
Yeah.
And most of the time it was appreciated. I mean, not most of the time. I hope that
Yeah.
it was appreciated. And I guess that's why I stayed in this business for 26 years.
Yeah.
And my customers, some of them, I had the second and the third generation coming to me.
Yeah. And it's funny that we touch on this, and there's a lot more to your life than this. But how I kind of was introduced to you was kind of in that same regard, is that, Lincoln, who we just both talked about, was introduced to me from actually an accountant who needed a business plan done, and he was delaying, and he's like, this guy's on me. He calls me up. He says, hey, can you to do a business plan? So, I meet Lincoln, who is one of your business partners. And this is on a Wednesday or Thursday. He says, hey, I want to open up a Leon's franchise, and I need a business plan. I said, okay, no problem. Normally back then, a plan took me about a week, 10 days, maybe a little bit longer. But I need it done by Tuesday. Now, this is Thursday. Oh, shit. And you can't let me down. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So okay, I'm going to do this. So literally, I go back to the office. I say to Mandeep, who, is the CPA, I say, shit, we got to have this plan done by Tuesday. And that's when I used to write the plans myself. So I think I stayed up. I learned everything about Leon's and Welland and how the guy started, which was an encouraging factor in itself. And sure enough, come Tuesday, boom, we have the plan. And he's like, you did it. And I said, yeah, you said you wanted it by Tuesday, and I wanted to deliver. So it's like you said, it's the fact that I actually delivered that plan spawned into so many other things about, our relationship. If I would have came back 10 days later and said, oh, shit, I can't do it, or came up with multiple excuses,
Exactly.
nothing would have happened.
Exactly.
And that amount of money that I felt that I got paid merely wasn't enough for the amount of time that I put into it. But the reward is that it built on, the opportunity to work with you, and you bought the building and he bought the business. And so when you talk about over delivering and setting the expectation,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you're referencing, I would imagine.
Of course. I mean, and if you can't do that, or you don't do that, first from a personal, I don't know how you can feel good about yourself if you don't do that.
Yeah.
It's tough. The fact is that I never went to bed at night and say, oh, I should have done this or should have done that.
Yeah.
I never second, guessed myself.
Right.
Was always sleeping well and having great time at home after work.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I did more than I should have all the time. And that was what was rewarding. and I guess kept me in business and made me in many ways successful.
And is that do you think that is something that is inherent? It seems to me that for you it's inherent. It's who you are. It's in your blood, or is it something that as a entrepreneur that you can be taught? You know, like
No, I thought or thought about it.
like do you think that you inherently it sounds like it's in you,
It's in me. Yeah.
but there's in today's there's all these young uh, people or business owners they want to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be an entrepreneur, but
Yeah.
I don't know what it is
Exactly.
to be an entrepreneur. And I always say to them, it's where you work your ass off, and then when you go to bed, you know that you've given 110%,
Exactly.
regardless of what happened.
Exactly.
You gave everything that you needed to give.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You got to have that. In French, it's said fibre, which is fiber.
Yeah.
It's you. It's in every
Yeah.
cell in your body
Yeah.
is thinking that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I came to Canada, I was watching this advertising on TV, and there was some dumb advertising where I think I told you about that once, and I said doesn't make sense.
Right.
And they were trying to sell fax machines
Okay.
or paper for fax
Oh.
machines. So of course, if you want to sell paper, what it did, it was like fax machine, basically uh, uh, how do you rolling out
Yeah.
paper and tons, and the guy said, "Whoa, look, you got a machine and this and that." And he says, "But don't you think it's too much paper or something like that?" He says, "Well, that's the cost of doing business." I said, "So you mean that it's okay to waste?"
Right.
Basically, they were
Accepting the fact that
accepting the fact that no matter what, that's the cost of doing business. No,
Right.
I mean they weren't questioning
Yeah.
if it's economical or not. They were just saying, and that attitude, I saw it in a lot of people, and I saw a lot of people that say, "Well, that's the cost of doing business." I
Yeah.
says,
What is
so you take anything as a cost,
yeah.
and everything is justified by that's the cost.
Yeah.
Is there a way of reducing the cost?
Keeping more in your pocket?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I saw one day this interview with the CEO of RBC.
Mm-hmm.
He was interviewed on TV. The time there was, I think, two channels, so he was on TVO as a matter. And they were talking about cutting costs, and it resonated naturally with me. I mean, these things were so natural for me, and then I hear this kind of big shot, right, saying basically cutting, talking about cutting costs,
Mm-hmm.
and it relates to this. That's the cost of doing business. He says, you know, he, the interviewer asked him, so at what point do you decide that you have to cut costs? He says, you don't. There's no point where you decide you have to cut. If you get to the point where you make a decision to cut costs,
It's
it's
too
too
late.
late.
It's too late. You've passed the point.
He said,
Yeah.
you got to wake up in the morning
Yeah.
and do everything that you do is
Based-
geared towards
Yeah.
cutting costs.
Yeah.
So you cut costs from day one,
Yeah.
from minute one, and it's 1 cent at a time.
Yeah. I've always looked at that and said from like again starting our own businesses, like how can I like even buying furniture, when we started the business and we had to buy furniture, you could go out and you go to Staples or whatever and you buy it. But like I'd go on Kijiji and I would just surf and surf. And lucky enough, some guy literally spent millions of dollars, went out of business. He was selling all of his furniture for like 10 cents on the dollar, brand new stuff. And 50% of the stuff that we have in Mississauga was us basically buying the stuff from a guy that spent full price. And we literally had to lug it ourselves, pick it up, put it on a truck, and then deliver it. But you could go out and spend, 10 times on new stuff, but would that make sense logically or from a business perspective? It doesn't.
Yeah.
But many people go out there and buy the best things to start their business.
Yeah, it's the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to buy the best also.
Yeah. Why?
I mean, well, it costs a lot. Well, it's the best.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. So
It's the best.
It's the best. So you like when you look at now, the fact that you're at this level, and now you have successfully transitioned out of business. What do you see now as like for yourself? I know like even on the art perspective, you're still doing business. I see you still posting. You got some beautiful art. How do you see your journey moving forward? What do you see for yourself?
I don't know. My I'm not as ambitious as I was when I started.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm more patient with exploring the possibilities, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to feed my family anymore.
Yeah.
When I started the gallery business at the beginning, and you mentioned something about it, say you got to put food on the table, and that was one of my main concerns. I mean, I could have done other things that were more prestigious, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
in a way, but I decided to go for what's the best way to preserve capital.
Sure.
That was my goal, and within the circumstances that were prevailing at the time, which was the recession and so on and so forth, it wasn't an easy task to preserve capital. So, and putting food on the table, of course,
Sure. Yeah.
young kids. And so today I don't have that. I mean, I'm not worried from where the next dollar is going to come from. So I can be a bit more selective. I can, things come my way. I'm not going to pass or not take. I'm going to be more selective. Let's put it this way.
Gotcha.
So, and I know that opportunities are there.
Yeah.
You just have to be, attentive of what's going on.
Yeah.
And as I'm not. I don't miss opportunities if they are there.
Yeah.
So in a way, I kind of today diversify myself more on how to invest, and that's another way of preserving or growing my capital.
Right.
Is I spend more time doing that.
Okay.
I don't set. I don't. I mean, can't say that I don't have goals, but my goal is to preserve or grow, and it's growing. It's not shrinking for sure. So I think that's what I'm doing now is definitely a transition from one aspect of business that is totally different
than what you were doing before.
That was doing before. Before I was stuck to a place where I was waiting for my customer to come and see me.
Yeah.
And today I'm just basically trying to take care of my babies.
Yes. Keep the babies being dollars.
Yeah.
Dollars. Gotcha. And I know it's been we've had a long, great conversation. What advice can you give young or entrepreneurs that have or starting a business that are trying to figure out how to grow their business? Like, what are 3 things that you could say to them that this might help them in the future or now?
Whoa. That needs another podcast.
Yeah. If we had bullet points to say,
Yeah.
hey, this is the
Well, again, yeah. What advice I would give?
yeah, like,
Do first. Do what you know best.
or what you have a passion.
What you have a passion for.
Right.
Make sure that you have an idea of what you're getting into.
Okay.
Don't get into businesses that you have no experience or knowledge of what they're all about.
Right. So do your research and
do your research 100%.
Yeah.
Do your research, and then you have to have a gut feeling for this I can do.
Okay.
This I can do, or can do better than my neighbor.
Gotcha.
And that's what made me successful, is that whatever I did, I knew I can do better
Yeah.
than the guy that did more or less. Because basically every time I saw somebody doing something in a certain way, I said, why this way?
Right.
I mean, you can do it the other way.
Yeah. So having
Didn't you think of doing it a different way?
so looking at business a little bit differently.
Yeah, you have to look at the potential that, to make something grow and in a different way. So if you go into business, you got to go with that feeling. I can do better.
I can do. Okay.
I can do better. I think this guy's got it wrong. He's a wrong business.
Right.
Let me show you how it's done.
Do it the way that
I mean,
yeah.
and believing in your capacity to do that. I mean, it's not being arrogant or pompous about I can do better. No, it's believing deep inside of you that you can do better. So that's, I remember, I mean, even, when I was in the kibbutz, I mean, I told you, they would put me in charge of things right away, give me managing. One of the jobs that I did was working in carpentry. And I came with this guy that was doing carpentry, okay? He was the carpenter, the kibbutz carpenter. And he was doing stuff that, okay, but... And I saw what he was doing, and I said, holy shit, there is a lot of things that can be done and made. And from there, he was basically fixing chairs, doing reparations here and there, putting things together, gluing stuff, nailing stuff. And I said, you can build furniture here.
Right.
And I started building furniture. As a matter of fact, I started making my own frames from raw wood when I was in the kibbutz already.
Right.
Working in carpentry, I said, I can make my own frames.
Okay.
I don't have to buy expensive frames.
Right.
I would take raw wood, shape it, and make it. And then I started making toys for kids.
Right.
So, from, basic carpentry shop, you turn it into potentially toy manufacturer.
By looking at it differently.
Just by looking at the business differently. So I said, I can do better. Right. And I did better.
Right.
And I came out with this idea at the kibbutz at the time. And I said, I have contracts. I have somebody that's willing to buy toys that I make. I made prototypes of toys for kids that were competing with toys that would come from Japan at the time. It was the best. And they said, if you can manufacture, we'll take them.
Right.
I came to kibbutz and I said, this is it. I have, to employ women, to give, a bit more diversified job opportunities for women, because women were in traditional businesses like taking care of kids, being in the kitchen, laundry. I said, some women want to do something else. Yeah. And they shut down that idea of mine because they were... And no wonder that the kibbutz ended up being dismantled, because they didn't have the bigger vision of things. They would have made millions with just opening a toy manufacturer. I had the market already.
Right.
I had the buyer.
Ready to go.
Who?
The buyer. You had
Oh, the buyer. I don't know where you go.
No, I'm saying you had the buyer ready to go. Move.
Oh, ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah. The buyer was
Yeah.
ready to go. And it was like a big distribution. It was one of the biggest distribution in Israel at the time. And they were willing to take my product. And I said, holy moly.
Wow.
I came with prototypes and everything, design. And I mean, from just looking at something, so you can do better.
Is
Yeah.
it the mindset?
And I proved, and every time I thought I can do better, and I had the gut feeling that I can do better, I did better. So if you have that,
that's
the key.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, as I said, lots of valuable information here. We've got other podcasts we'll have to talk about the other things. But
Sure.
I appreciate your time. I know this has been phenomenal for me. Hopefully it's been phenomenal for you.
It was a pleasure.
And we'll do it again. And
For sure.
thanks for being my first guest.
Thank you for giving me the first spot.
All right. Thanks again, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.